Serrano-Correa, and I'm back going over chapter 3 in your book. I'm going to be using the PowerPoint presentation today, which you can find under Assignment 0 on eCampus, all the way to the bottom of Assignment 0. So starting, I'm going to actually not go through every single slide, but I'm going to start here with slide 5. And the first thing that your chapter introduces is object and reference variables. So in the previous chapter, we looked at integer variables and we looked at character variables, double, and float. And in this chapter, we'll look at reference and object variables. So we did look at one of these in the last chapter, which was this. We created a scanner object so that we could read from the keyboard. So here, string is str is actually an object of the class string. So string is a class. And this class has many methods. So anytime that you have a class, and we'll talk a lot more about classes so you can understand it, but anytime you have a class, inside the class, we have what we call methods. And if you took C++, they're called functions, okay? And when we create an object of the class string, what we're doing is we're actually creating a reference variable. So str actually contains an address to where this string is saved in memory. So the string doesn't get saved in the actual variable like x. X actually contains the actual value. Like if x is 45, x contains the 45. But str, what it contains is the starting location of the string. So we call this a reference variable because it just has an address that references to where we find the actual string. And we also call this an object, so str is an object. And so if you can think about it, if you go somewhere and it tells you, it gives you the address of where you live, like in a book, right? You say, okay, Jeanette Serrano lives at such and such address. Then you have to then go and find the address to find Jeanette. Jeanette doesn't live inside the pages of the book. You have to go drive and find the address of where she lives. And so this is kind of like that. You have the address, and then the str contains the address. And str itself actually it's in a memory. It's a memory location, but it's a memory location that contains addresses or references to where to find the objects. In this slide, what we're looking at is if we create a string variable like we did here, and we assign it the string Java programming, the reference or where that string is at this address. Just to pretend this is the address where it's found. If you decide later on to change the value of str and you want to change the value to hello there, it doesn't actually overwrite Java programming at this address. It creates a whole new object with a reference to a whole new place. So now it's referencing this address, 3850. So when you create objects of classes, those objects, you're not able to write over them. So we call them immutable. So once they're created, they cannot be changed. Now it looks like you're changing it, right? Because you're doing str equals hello there. You're assigning a new value. But really in the background, a whole new address is assigned and it's referencing this location. Okay, so in Java, we have primitive data type and we have primitive type variables and we have reference type variables. So going back here, this is primitive, this is a reference variable. So, and it makes sense, right? Because str is holding holding a reference to some memory location out there in memory. Here you see this arrow. Anytime that you want to represent in a drawing that a variable has a reference to something, we use an arrow because we say that it's pointing to. So str is pointing to the location 3850 that holds the value hello there, or the object hello there. Primitive type variables directly store data into their memory space. So that's what we said earlier. So the integer x directly stores the 45 into x. Reference variables store the address of the object containing the data. An object is an instance of a class, and the operator new is used to instantiate an object. So if you think of a class, think of one way you could think about it is if you have a blueprint of a car. So for example, I drive a Mazda CX-5. So there's a blueprint of what a Mazda CX-5 looks like. And then you have all different properties that you can change of the Mazda CX-5. For example, you can change the color. On the outside, you can change the seats if you want cloth or leather, what color you want, sunroof or not. So these are all different properties that can change, but they're all going to have the same shape, right? They're all going to be pretty much the same, just some properties that we can add or delete or change from that car. So the class itself is the Mazda CX-5, and the object would be each individual car that is created. So each individual car that we see in a car lot in where they sell the cars in a dealership, each car would be the object, and each object is unique depending on what properties were chosen. But each car, right? Each car is an object. Each car holds a space, its own little space. So my car holds a space. The red CX-5 holds a space. Another car just like mine holds a space. So those are separate objects. There are many predefined packages, classes, and methods in Java, and I'll just show you an example of something that we did yesterday. Or in our previous program, our previous presentation. Okay, so this was the program that we were looking at in our previous presentation. And here, let's see, minimize it. So here we talk about there are many predefined packages. So a library is a collection of packages, and a package contains several classes. So here we have java.util scanner. So scanner is the actual class, and scanner is the class. So here's the class right here, and then the package is util right there. And scanner has many different methods. One of the methods that we used was next double. And we also saw that if you looked at your book, there was a next and next int. So it has different methods that you can use. So again, class, here's the class scanner. Here is the object console. Here we're instantiating a new object, so we're creating this new object, scanner, and it requires one parameter. And it's just saying we're getting the input from the console. And then here we have console and a dot is something that we always use to then call the methods within the classes. The methods have instructions, so the methods are the ones that do all the work. But you got to know what class it is, and you have to know what parameters you need. So there's a package, let's see, so here we're talking about predefined classes, and a predefined class, again, like string and scanner, are just classes that are already created and you can use their methods. Here they're talking about the math class, and math class is something that C++ also has, and you could have learned in your previous class. And the math class is in the package called java.lang. And here they're using one of the many methods in the math class. And this particular method, it's a power method, and it just takes the first value, the first parameter, and it raises it to the power of the second parameter. So x raised to the power of y. And so if you were to use this, you just put a number here, or a variable, and then a number right here, or a variable. And so if you're wanting to know, what are all the different methods that are in the math Java class. So you Google it, and it gives you what the method does, the name of the method, what parameters it needs. So in this particular method, it would tell you give it two parameters, x and y, it returns which one is the highest value. Is it x or is it y? Min, square root, all super useful methods, absolute value, give me a random number. And so you can do that with any class, so you can see what methods are in the class. So same thing we can do with the string class, and the string class is discussed in this chapter, and it actually in your book it tells you all the different or I don't know if it goes over all the methods, but it talks about the methods that it wants you to use from the string class. So here's a is empty, so is my string empty? What is the character at, and then what, the position. So the position of, when we're starting at 0, if the word is hello, H would be at 0. So what's the position of the character at 0? What's the character at 1? Does my string contain a sequence of characters? So there's all kinds of really useful methods that you can use with a string class. The length, of course, it's something that you would need. So, for example, if you're if you're getting a passcode or a birthday and you know that it has to be a certain number of characters, is it equal to that length, or is it greater than or equal to, and so on and so forth. So you want to look at all the different types of methods that you can use with a string class. So here's an example of using the power method. They're passing a 2 and a 3, so this is 2 raised to the power of 3, so it'd be 2 times 2 times 2. And the dot operator, again, is used to access the methods. So anytime you type in, let me get back to, here we go. Anytime that you type in an object, so console's from the class scanner, when you put a period, automatically it's going to tell you all the different methods that you can use, and it tells you the parameters that it requires. This requires no parameters, but this one requires a parameter, and this one requires this, or you can actually have it with a parameter or without long, with a parameter, without a parameter. So I can type in next double, or I can just click on it and it'll type it in for me. Okay, and then same thing for string. If I put string, it will come up, you know, the object from the class string, it's going to come up with all the different methods. So here's a class string. Here they define the variable, the reference variable name as string. Now the reference variable name contains the address to where Lisa Johnson is kept in memory. Now if we do name equals Lisa Johnson again, so you created it here and then you assigned it again. So in this step, what will happen is this Lisa Johnson will be in a different location than this Lisa Johnson. And we won't be able to access this location again. Eventually the garbage collector will come through and we'll just clean up this memory location will be deallocated. So just a little bit about the garbage collector. So if you have a memory space that's no longer in use, and so nothing is referring to that space, then sometime during the program execution, the Java system is going to reclaim the memory, and this is called garbage collection. So it reclaims that memory and makes it available for you to use again. Now, if you don't want to wait until that happens and you want to do it, you can by calling a method called GC from the class system. So you would type in system.gc, and at this point it would reclaim this space here. But at this point, you're not pointing to the same location. A string object is an instance of a class string. So what does that mean? A string object, name is a string object, is an instance of this class called string. The address of a string object with the value Lisa Johnson stored in name. String methods are called using the dot operator. Okay, we went over all that. So here's how this is how you can visualize how strings are stored in memory. So if you want to access each separate character in a string, you can, and you do that by the index. And actually You do that by using a method that's given to you in the class string. The class string itself is accessing each separate memory location. So you don't have to worry about that. All you have to worry about is using the methods. You wouldn't actually, in Java, you wouldn't actually access each of these separately. So notice that the P is at 0. This is an index, so it's at sentence 0. And R is at sentence 1, and O is at sentence 2, etc. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, but there's some math that goes on here where you get to add like 0 to the address, where 0 added to the address that's stored in sentence gives you this space right here. So sentence points to sentence of 0, and then 1 added to this takes you to the next character in that string. Here it just goes through and it just tells you about all, some of the methods, the commonly used methods. There's more than these, as you saw earlier. So char at, we looked at that. So specifically, we wanted it returns the character at a specific position. So if you want to know what character's at position 1, then you could say char at 0. And then index of, this tells you the index, like what position is the character. So what position is the character J in my sentence, and then it can give you return the value. So position J over here is right there at index 17. And string concatenation, concat, it takes one string and it attaches it or joins it to the other string. So here we're joining is fun to this sentence. So it would say programming with Java is fun. So you're just adding it to the end of that string. Length gives you how many characters are in your string. So it's from 0 to 20, so it's actually 21 characters. Okay, so it doesn't give you 20, it says 21 because there's actually 21 characters because you're starting at 0. And then replace, you can replace characters in your string, and you can extract also, you can extract part of your string. Like let's say you know that you're getting a first and last name and all you wanted is the last name. You can extract the last name by telling it where to start, what index to start. Now, let's say that you have a first and a last name and you want to extract the last name. The first thing you have to figure out is where's that space? At what index? Not that one. What index? Yeah, this one right here. Index of string. So what you would put sentence.index of or name.index of, and here inside the double quotes you would have a space. So it'd be, let's look for the blank. So once you know what index your space is, you know that the very next thing is going to be the last name. So let's just pretend that programming is my first name, with is the last name. It would give me that the space is at 11, so that I know that 12 is the beginning of my last name. And so then I could use substring to then extract that last name because I know that it begins at 12. To lower and to uppercase, we use this a lot when you get data from the user and you don't care about you don't care if it's case sensitive. So this can be, for example, when you log into a computer, your username is never case sensitive. So you enter your username, the the program can either change it all to lowercase or all to uppercase, and then it compares it to either something that's lower or upper. Also, if you have yes or no questions, they can enter however they want, and you can then compare it to whatever you change it to. Does my string start with this? Does my string end with so and so? So all kinds of different methods. So now we're going to look at input output, and I'm going to actually start the next video on this section.